Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing great today, too. Thanks for asking. And we'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the value of astrology as a spiritual tool by providing tangible evidence of the divine sequence. Listen as we explore the possibility of using the logic, order, and predictability of the celestial bodies to help reveal the divine creation. In this show, we will discuss some ways of using the unreal to uncover the real and true. Mary Baker Eddy wrote in Miscellaneous Writings, page 334, line 5, "Astrology is well in its place, but this place is secondary." Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and live in the changeless state of being. Swami, the topic of today's program is astrology's place in spiritual science. So I understand that astrology is a science. Obviously, we know there's a spiritual science, but how are the two different from each other?
Astrology, to me, has always been the mother of science because science began with the observation of nature. And as we started to look at the celestial bodies and the movement of these celestial bodies, we started to get a little better understanding of what surrounds us. And then as we evolved in our thinking, we started to see an association between what surrounds us and what is within us. The direction that I think astrology took was they started to create a kind of cookbook that was the association between these movements of the celestial bodies and circumstances and situations and events that were happening on Earth. To make astrology a spiritual science, you really have to come from the perspective spirit is all, and that what we're calling matter or things that are visible and tangible have to come under the jurisdiction of being unreal. Now what we're trying to do is we're trying to use astrology to give us some clues as to what is invisible and intangible by using what is visible and tangible. Because in spiritual science, one of the first rules that you learn is the mortal mind, the mind that is directly associated with our corporeal senses, can't bring forth the divine image. And so if we are looking at these planets and luminaries and stars, and we're giving them power. We have a belief in matter. That's pretty much how most of these sciences work, is they work on belief, the association between what is appearing in our senses and then what we believe to be true about them. But spirit is a self-existent power. In fact, it is the only power in the universe, and it is represented by the one power, which is invisible and intangible to corporeal sense, but it is whole, it's complete, it's fulfilled, it's finished. And so now, rather than believing these planets have some sort of effect upon life on this earth, we're really starting to get away from the belief in life on this earth, that this appearance of life, this false sense of existence that we're calling life, isn't life at all. So we're going to reverse engineer everything, and we're going to use what it is that we think life is in order to give us clues into how to discover the truth of life, what really is eternal life, the changeless state of being.
So let's break that down just a little bit more. You're saying the life as we know it is not the life that you're talking about. You're talking about, I think, that we are one with God, therefore we really are not this human existence. We're so much more than that. And that's what we have to concentrate on.
Yeah, it all starts with a belief in God, a belief in the one power. I mean, however you want to term that, a belief in the one life. Then you also have to refine that. You have to understand the nature of this creation. This creation is perfect, it's whole, it's complete. That's the truth of being. Life is perfect. Now, once we're starting from that, then you have a principle. Now you have something that you can work with that is true. It's just like the principles of mathematics, the laws of mathematics. When applied correctly, you're able to balance your checkbook. You're using this law. Now, from the perspective, what is appearing in our corporeal senses is a thought about what's really here. What's really here is a spiritual universe. This is a perfect divine creation. And what we are calling life is our thought about that divine creation. And you can find this in the Bible when you go from Genesis 1, which gives you clues as to the divine creation, where everything is very good. And then you come to Genesis 2, where there's a mist upon the earth, and then this recreation, this secondary creation, which is the human concept about life. And now, rather than the way that we have been using astrology, which is we're looking at the planets and we're saying the planets have effect on me, which is very similar and corresponds with Orthodox religion. Orthodox religion believes that God made this world, and therefore God made good and evil. And so we as a mortal being are this lowly worm of a creature seeking redemption. And so we are asking God for assistance. We are asking God to help us. And we're also accepting that whatever is happening to us is ordained by the divine creator. Now, it doesn't work like that. And in truth, God knows absolutely nothing about this man-made human creation, this secondary recreation that we're calling life. And so rather than complying with that and working with the testimony of our corporeal senses and the belief in matter, we have to start with a belief in spirit and an understanding that life is perfect, it's whole, it's complete. And now all we want to do is we want to use the movement of the celestial bodies. We want to use the zodiac to give us clues as to how this divine mind is thinking. We're trying to use what's visible and tangible to help us understand what is invisible and intangible, incomprehensive to our corporeal senses. And the best use that we can find with that comes under the understanding that consciousness is experience. What we're experiencing is our thought about it. But now what we're learning is that we can think differently. We can correct our thought with the divine idea, which will then have a profound effect on our external experience, which is nothing more than our thought about what's here. But to use the divine creation, the divine mind, to correct our thought is optimal. And the reason is because when creation is understood spiritually, which means that spirit is cause, then creation is perfect. But if we accept this secondary thought loop, this other stream of what we're calling life as real, we're accepting a belief in two powers and we're under the law of karma, we have a belief in matter. And so finding the rightful place of astrology in a spiritual science, because that's really how it originated. And just like religion originated with an understanding of life as being spiritual, that there is one God, there is one life, there's only one being. The more we identify with that, the more we understand ourselves to be the invisible, intangible omnipresence, omnipotence, the omniscience of divine mind, then the more harmonious and indestructible what is appearing in our corporeal senses will appear to be.
Well, I think you just answered the question that I was going to ask you relating to the first sentence of our summary when we said we were talking about the value of astrology as a spiritual tool by providing tangible evidence of the divine sequence. And I just wondered, could you just give me a breakdown as to what that means again?
Yeah, well, when you're starting with an understanding of the nature of divine mind, which is perfect, whole, complete, oftentimes what we're looking at in our mental image or what is being objectified by our impressions in our mind, externalizing as imperfection, lack, limitation, chaos, war, disease, sickness. None of these things are divine qualities. Now, the tangible evidence of the divine sequence is logic, order, predictability. The fruits of the Spirit, peace, love, joy, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, patience, temperance. These are the things that we really want to start to focus on. And that will start to paint a much more accurate description of the truth of being. Now, if we are sowing to the Spirit, which means that we have fidelity in that divine creation and we know that life is perfect, that by us being consciously attuned to that divine creation, it must externalize as improvements in what is appearing in our corporeal senses. But if we sow to the flesh, if we believe in matter, and we're reacting to the testimony of our senses, then we're in the trap. And we are now trying to fix what isn't there, which is, I think, the direction that most of us take. We're constantly trying to figure out how the unreal became real. And especially with our Western approach to science, empirical science, you're in this ever-ending, never-ending search.
I think it's important to make a distinction between astrology and horoscopes. We're not talking about horoscopes. We're not talking about the position of the planets to make our physical world that much more easier for us to manage.
Yeah, I think this type of distortion is across the board. Before astrology became property of newspapers and magazines, in its original state, it was a spiritual science. I think before religion became a business, it was specifically designed to teach people how to reconnect. Religion means to relink, to rejoin with their true sense of self, spiritual identity, the truth of our being.
So, Swami, let's get back to what you were talking about, the unreal. What are some ways that we can use the unreal to uncover the real and true?
Well, the unreal is what is reporting in our corporeal senses. And that might be a real stretch for a lot of people. But as you educate yourself and you start to see exactly how things work and how they don't work, you start to realize underlying mortal thinking is this divine knowing. And if we're not consciously attuned to the divine creation, we're unconsciously attuned to this world thought about the divine creation.
Well, we're going to pause right here to hear a word from our sponsor. So listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Yoga Theory 1, Human Development and the 8 Essential Stages of Kriya Yoga. This program is a comprehensive course that will help you get your arms around the science of Kriya Yoga. It provides a clear understanding of the goals and objectives behind yoga, along with the physics of spirituality. It includes the practices, supportive concepts of Kriya Yoga, and the process in human development, apotheosis, the process of the human becoming divine. A complete guide on how to become a human in the adult state. Get the light in your soul and experience the simplicity and joy of union with the divine. This course is available in live classes at the ashram or online with 8 videos or 4 CDs. Visit our website, www.ipdtransform.com, for more information. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, in the summary, we have a quote from Mary Baker Eddy from Miscellaneous Writings, page 334, line 5, and I'll read it again. Astrology is well in its place, but this place is secondary. Hoping that you can maybe shed some light on that quote for us all.
Yeah, I think what's really important here is what Mary Baker Eddy means when she says secondary. In my opinion, what she's talking about is you really can't believe in matter. You have to understand the allness of spirit. But what I think might be helpful is if I continue with what she wrote in Miscellaneous Writings. Following up what you read, astrology is well in its place, but this place is secondary. Necromancy has no foundation. In fact, no intelligence, and the belief that it has deceives itself. Whatever stimulates power and truth in matter does this as a lie declaring itself. That mortals' faith in matter may have the effect of power, but when the whole fabrication is found to be a lie, away goes all this supposed power and prestige. Why do Christian Science treat disease as disease since there is no disease? She continues, this is done only as one gives the lie to a lie because it is a lie, without one word of truth in it. You must find error to be nothing. Then, and only then, do you handle it in science. The diabolism of suppositional evil at work in the name of good is a lie of the highest degree of nothingness. Just reduce this falsity to its proper denomination and you have done with it. How shall we treat a negation or error? By means of matter or mind? Is matter truth? No. Then it could not antidote error. That's the end of the quote. Now, she opened the world up to this whole different way of thinking. We were coming out of the traditional orthodox religious approach and accepting that God created this world and God created matter into a better understanding, a higher, more advanced consciousness that sees the truth of being, which is talked about in religion, in the Bible. Know the truth and it makes you free. Well, it makes us free from the belief that we are a mortal being. The belief that God did create a world that has an expiration date, that God could create something that was not perfect. And so as we are starting to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but understand the origins of these symbolic languages, like astrology, mythology, the parables of religion, the symbolism of fairy tale, and you resurrect this with a better understanding, you learn how we could start to use what's visible and tangible, not to help us manage what's visible and tangible. Like she says, you can't correct the error with the error. We need the truth to correct the error. Once you start to use astrology as an indicator of the changeless state of being, the truth of being, the logic, the order, the predictability of the movement of the celestial bodies, it's not or never real. It's always a concept. It's always an image. It's always our thought about it. It's world thought about what's here. But the more divinely mental that image is, the more harmonious and indestructible it will appear. So we want to start to use the divine sequence, things like day and night, the days of the week, the months of the year, the seasons of the year. All of that, as it starts to open our consciousness up to the divine creation, the divine idea, the perfection of being, then it becomes a very helpful tool. It's not just a way of justifying yourself for being in lack, in limitation, or in hopes of some change in your condition. It is there to help us understand we are the reflection of perfection.
Well, I see we have a quote from William Kilpatrick when he has mentioned the word error and astrology. Could you read that for us now?
Yeah, William Kilpatrick wrote a paper called Treatment, and I'll begin the quote. Among the many phases of error which I mentioned in the list which I gave some pages back, I included the arguments or beliefs of astrology or planetary control. I want to impress upon you the importance of handling that phase of animal magnetism. That's the end of the quote. Now, again, this is the way people thought astrology worked. We were using the planets because they had power. The planets dictated these archetypal influences upon the human experience. Now, as we come out of belief in matter, period, you don't have to throw astrology out the window. You can still use it to help you understand the development of yourself, using the cycles and aspects to help us introduce the element of timing. Until we come completely out of time, space, concept, belief, thinking, human will, and personal sense, we can still use time and space to give us clues and insights into how to get out of this mind that can't bring forth the divine image.
Well, next is a quote by Robert Louis Stevenson. Can you go over that with us?
The more we understand life from the basis of the divine creation, the more we can use what is visible and tangible to help us understand what is invisible and intangible. And Robert Louis Stevenson is quoted saying, "Quiet minds cannot be perplexed or frightened, but go on in fortune or misfortune at their own private pace, like a clock during a thunderstorm." Now, this is something I really like, that visual, the clock during a thunderstorm. It's not affected by what's happening to the ship. And the same should be as we rise above corporeal sense, as we learn how to stop thinking with our 5 corporeal senses, and we abide in the divine creation, in this silence and in this stillness, and not just passively, not accepting fortune or misfortune. What we're really trying to do is bring forth the divine image. By our conscious awareness of the divine image, we activate it in our experience. Consciousness is experience. But when you let divine mind correct your thought, it must externalize as fortune.
Well, can we talk more about, you had said earlier, the divine creation is the changeless state of being, meaning perfect harmony. What else can you tell us about that?
Well, I think the first thing that we start to see is anything that is appearing in our corporeal senses is under change. And so we must come to the realization that we cannot comprehend the divine creation with the material senses. We can use the qualities of what is appearing in the senses to represent a consciousness itself. Because, like we say, consciousness is experience. So we look for a consciousness that is more attuned to the divine creation, more attuned to the activity of the divine creation, without focusing on the appearance or events, circumstances, or situations, for these are the changing conditions of the personal mentality. And this is the main reason why we stop thinking and we make our mind an avenue of awareness for the presence of divine mind. And in silence and in stillness, we let the divine idea reveal itself to us from within. And from that elevated sense of awareness, we can start to live under the influence of our spiritual awareness, which brings us eternal life as opposed to sowing to the flesh, which leads us to death.
Well, so let's talk more about the physical universe. And we know from what you said earlier, the physical world is a mental image. And I've heard you say the more divinely mental the image, the more harmonious and indestructible the image appears. But let's talk some more about that with our listeners. How does that relate to this spiritual astrology?
Yeah, in spiritual astrology, we work from the principle. When spirit is cause, creation is perfect. This law lifts us out of the belief in matter, the belief that there is power in a planet or in a luminary or in stars, instead of projecting from the false premise of a material belief, we simply use the observable behavior of the celestial bodies to give us reassurance of the presence of the divine creator. The simple fact that we know where these planets are going to be 100 years from now, 500 years from now, that is giving us a clue to the intelligence of divine mind. That's the clue. The fixed stars are probably the closest tangible image we could find to identify with the changeless state of being. And so this is what we look for. We look to this to give us assurance. The changeless state of being exists.
Well, not only does it exist, but when you said the planets would be around for 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, whatever, but we have to understand too that we have to get ourselves out of this concept of time, because that would also be part of the changeless state of being. Would that be right?
Right. I mean, we want to come out of the mind that is forming thoughts and opinions based on the information that's coming through our senses. We want to think with divine mind. We want to let divine mind take over the scientific government of our being. In order for us to do this, we must attune ourselves to the divine idea. We must become and accept ourselves to be spirit. As we gain more and more awareness of the invisible, intangible force that is making the planets rotate around the sun, we trust in divine law to hold, control, and govern our life. Instead of reacting to the circumstances, we rest in the truth, which is running a perfect universe.
Well, we're going to end our show for today. So listeners, be sure to visit the website, www.ipdtransform.com. Once you're on the homepage and you see the fading banner Blog Talk Radio, if you just click that directs you to the Blog Talk Radio Show catalog page. And also by clicking on the products tab, then online classes, that will direct you to all the classes that Swami has available for you. So with that, Swami, do you have any final thoughts about today's program?
Well, I would like to encourage people to join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and live in the changeless state of being. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami and Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.